Well, one of the things that is nice to understand about law of attraction is that it's always accurate. If you want to know how you're doing vibrationally, there are two ways. You can recognize by your emotion whether you're feeling good or not, in alignment or not, or you can recognize by what's manifesting around you. So if you're surrounded by uplifting people who are having a good time, who are high on life, who are complimentary in nature, then you know that that's where your habit of chronic vibration is. But if you're surrounded by people who are worried and frustrated and negative and clamoring and concerned about who has more and who has less and that sort of thing, then there's very high probability that law of attraction is gathering around that point of attraction, those kinds of things. You see what we're getting at? So when you say, what can I do so that I will be liked more by them? It is such an interesting thing. We've got to tell you that we have more black sheep in this vortex with us. It's just because you are not willing to compromise. You are not willing to give up your freedom to please. You have had a stronger constitution, so to speak of. You've been clear about who you are. You've been less willing to just go along. And a crowd that's going along wants others to go along. And when you don't go along in time, you have to accept that it's because you're vibrationally different. You march to the beat of your own drummer. And if you spend time in the vortex, the beat of the drummer of your inner being, the beat of the drummer, it's a cadence that reverberates through the entire universe. In other words, when you get in there, the thing about this vortex that is so interesting is that it's not something that you initially see your way into. It's something that you feel your way into. And if you get hooked on the feeling of it and keep going there and staying there because of the feeling of it, in time, you become so familiar with the higher vibration that then you begin to translate the world through that vibration. So then you begin to see. In other words, it's easy for some people to walk out into the world and to see all of the flaws and all of the problems and all of the trouble and all of the trauma. It's easier for others to see all of the beauty and all of the abundance and all of the well-being. It just depends on where you're tuned, you see. And so what we are getting at with this is that everyone is approaching everything from their vantage point, and they are having the experience that they are having based upon the vantage point that they hold. And when you try to see from someone else's vantage point, you do yourself a disservice because your vantage point is working for you. So when you decide that you're going to march to the rhythm of your own high vibration, and you're really going to tune yourself to it, what that means is the cooperative components that assemble around you are cooperative components to that high vibration. And often, the people that you were born with, the people that you want to be friends with, the people that you hung around with when you were younger, often, for whatever reason, they are offering a perspective that is different enough that they are not marching to the beat of the same drummer that you are. And when you let your criteria be anything other than your vortex, you can rendezvous with a lot of different people and you can have a lot of varied experiences and you can launch a lot of rockets, but you will never find fulfillment if you are gravitating to anything that is outside your own vortex. Now, inside the vortex, you don't feel dishonored. Inside the vortex, you don't feel like a black sheep in the sense that there's something wrong. You feel worthy of all good things. When you're in the vortex, not only that, but you're appreciative of others. You know you're really an allower when you're able to allow those who aren't allowing you. That's really the criteria. So from inside the vortex, as you're thinking about them, if you find yourself feeling bad, then the reason you feel bad is not because they haven't accepted you. It's that in your quest for their approval, you have left the vortex. That's why you feel bad. But you're associating it with them because you were focused upon them when the whole thing happened, you see. Every now and again, someone will say to Esther, if you would just knock the Abraham stuff off a little bit and just teach what Abraham has taught, that the world is out there ready for it in the way that the world has embraced the secret and so on. And Esther always replies, we are not looking for a big group. We are thrilled with this experience that is happening in every nearly moment of our life experience. Once you've tasted it, you cannot step back from it. And it's what everyone was born to live, you see. And the closer you are to it, and the more you embrace it, and the more you align with it, and the more you see the manifestational evidence of it, then the more you must be it. Then all that you are becomes on a more consistent basis all that you are. But it is an individual thing. And the sooner you make it an individual thing, the more often you experience it. The nice thing about creation is that when you understand the vortex and what it is, and you position yourself in relationship to it by just wanting to prepare yourself vibrationally in a way that it can call you, so that it's inspiration into who you are rather than motivation into who you are. Then once you get that squared away so that you really understand that, then you can just begin moving through life experience, because there's never anything. In other words, if you think that what's being inspired feels good and so you follow it, if it's not in alignment with who you are and everything that you want, you won't be able to maintain that feeling. That's what we were talking about earlier when we were saying that one who's connected to this energy of who you really are is more influential and more powerful than millions who are not. So you're being called inside your vortex. You're not being called inside someone else's vortex. You're being called to fulfill who you are. And certainly there's a lot of co-creating that goes on. So what we're really saying to you is, don't worry about making wrong steps, because you're sensitive enough that you will feel it as it is unfolding. And as it is unfolding, it may very well be satisfying much that is there. And remember, you never stop defining either. You're constantly defining what you want from where you stand. It's an ongoing thing. Did you hear us earlier say that as long as you are living, there will be variety that will cause your vortex to expand? And really, you never want to be at the end of that expansion, because it's the moving toward it that is the true thrill of life. Sit there for a minute, because that was a really important statement that we want you to take in. It's that coming into alignment, coming into the alignment that is a zest for life. If you're out of the vortex and you're so far from your alignment, then it's miserable. But once you're operating primarily from inside the vortex, where you're expanding and moving and expanding and moving, now you've got this ease and flow that is just delicious, you see. And it is the eruption of the new idea that is the thrilling thing. It isn't the accomplishing of the idea. It's the eruption of the idea. It's the giving birth to the idea, and the next, and the next, and the next, and the next. When you stand in the knowledge of the absolutedness of them coming into fruition, then that's really the ideal place to stand. On the verge, constantly on the verge, with knowledge that all things that you want are coming. But all things that you want, let's make this very clear, all things that you want will never have come. All things that you want are coming. And as fast as some of them manifest, more are in the ethers coming. In other words, always the next, always the next, always the next, always the next. Even when you reemerge into non-physical, there's never a standing still time. Always the next, always the next, always the next is an eternal process of becoming. And when you relax into the becoming, then every moment can be blissful, not just the ones where you're on the verge of a manifestation. They're all blissful. It's bliss. The contrast becomes blissful. The contrast becomes insightful. The contrast becomes energy. The rockets, even though you know you're not a match to them, can be satisfying in some way. Esther broke almost everything on a magnificent shelf of treasures that they'd gathered up from all around the world. She was dusting on a new etagere one day, not realizing how fragilely the top, very thick glass shelf was teetering on its little spokes. And as she touched her rag to the top shelf, it gave way and broke into the second, into the third, into the fourth. And Jerry hears the crashing of glass, and he calls to Esther from the other room because he knows she has no shoes on, because she rarely has shoes on. Stand still, don't move. And as he came, there were shards of glass sticking in the floor all around her, and Esther was standing there in the midst of the rubble of Yadras and Sabinas and all kinds of treasures. And Jerry said, "Oh, good, something to want." In other words, you never get it done. There is never an ending to the contrast that sets forth the desire, and the desire that calls you. It's the calling that is life, you see. And if everything that is calling you is answered, then nothing's calling you. That's the best we've ever said it. If everything that is calling you is answered, it never will be, then there is nothing that is calling you, but there always will be. In other words, expansion is contingent upon a new idea. If you're living in sameness, having same conversations with same people, living in same environments, your ability to ask is diminished dramatically. And so it's your ability to ask that brings the answers. It's your ability to understand a problem that brings a solution. It's all part of the process. Whenever anyone asks a question like this, we understand that the reason that they are asking it is because they are in the discomfort of not having something that they want. And it seems not like a very benevolent source energy that would allow anyone to stand outside of what they want. And we continue to say to you over and over again, you never are really outside of what you want, because the solution that you think you want and the problem that created the solution are inherent parts of one another. And once you understand that, then you can joyously embrace a problem, because you know the more you poke around at that problem, the more emphatic the solution's going to be. The whole point of this gathering really is not to rid you of problems. Never, ever, ever. We wouldn't deprive you of one contrasting moment even if we could. The point of this gathering is to help you to understand that the solution is there so that you become solution-oriented faster. And as you become solution-oriented faster, then you're more often in the vortex and more often living the fullness of what you are wanting. In other words, it's really interesting watching so many of you who are living in your civilized environments where you don't feel hunger, you're not looking for shelter. In other words, so much of what you need is already completely satisfied. And yet, often you find yourself miserable in your moment because you feel deprived of something else you want. And we want you to understand that all deprivation, every bit of it, no matter how it looks, is self-imposed. Because with a different vibrational stance, that deprivation could not continue long enough that you would give it the label of deprivation. In other words, when you go to the food buffet and you see all of that variety there, even though there are several things you might not choose to put on your plate, you don't ask them to remove it from the buffet because you want it not. And you don't feel deprived of what you do want because of the presence of what you don't want. In other words, you understand that it's all there for you to choose from when it comes to buffets. And we are just wanting you to understand that it's true of everything here. This we know for sure. If this time-space reality has the wherewithal to inspire within you a desire, it has the wherewithal to fulfill it completely. And when you know that, life is then really fun. Because you never stand in a moment that feels like deprivation. You just feel in a moment that feels like progress along the way to what you are wanting. And the better you get at it, then the more the platform that you stand on is joyful on your way to more. So it just gets better and better and better and better. Until then you can offer the true mantra that we would like you to all own, and that is satisfied with where I am and very eager for more.